Okay, let's take a look at an example of jury nullification in a real case. This illustration depicts the 1735 trial of John Peter Zenger, who was tried for seditious libel for publishing an article that criticized the royal governor of New York, who removed from office the colony's chief justice after the chief justice had decided against the governor in a recent case. So looking at it from a modern lens with what we know about First Amendment, freedom of the press, and freedom of speech, what Zenger essentially writes at the time would be protected under core political speech. In this case, is going to go a lot or do a lot to further and shape the founding generation's commitment to a free press. However, this takes place prior to the American Revolution, prior to the establishment of the U.S. Constitution and Bill of Rights, including the First Amendment, which establishes that freedom of press. So Zenger is put on trial for his criticism of the government. So if you think about like how many articles you could find online right this second that criticize the government, this is something to keep in mind as we think about the context of 1735. So he's tried for seditious libel, and under British law at the time, which also applied to the American colonies, where this case has taken place, truth is no defense to the charge. So he can't argue that his article is actually factual and telling the truth. He still can be convicted of seditious libel. So in your course, with this video, I will post a text excerpt from the trial, the argument made by Zenger's attorney, the gentleman kind of illustrated here, Andrew Hamilton, not to be confused with Alexander Hamilton. So in arguing that Zenger should not be punished for true statements criticizing the government, Zenger's attorney is essentially making the argument to the jury that they should acquit him despite the evidence against him. And in the end, the jury agreed with Hamilton, ignoring the existing rule under the English common law, and refused to convict Zenger. This is an early example of jury nullification, with the jurors refusing to convict a guilty defendant, in this case Zenger. So the facts of the case, if we followed the letter of the law, we should find him guilty, but the jury thought that a guilty verdict would be a miscarriage of justice, so they simply refused to issue a guilty verdict. The case is so galvanizing at the time that it came to stand for a core principle later enshrined by the founding generation in the First Amendment, namely that true statements criticizing the government cannot be punished. So this is a good example of jury nullification. There's the added wrinkle of First Amendment freedom of speech, but just take it as an example of when a jury disagrees with the way the law is applied, they ultimately have the power to acquit despite what the evidence might show.